This was
So yeah, just for every participant, we are recording this and it will be shared on the Cloud Security Alliance YouTube channel later on. Yeah, you can revisit that as well. Okay, so welcome to the talk. And I think 5G is a very hot topic these days, especially with the award of the 2 licenses to Singtel and the joint venture company about a month plus back. So there's a lot of questions and talks about 5G, what 5G can offer. In today's webinar, we're actually talking a little bit slightly more, right, slightly deeper into the 5G security. So we will be sharing things like what 5G can offer, but there will be a key focus on the security side because there's a lot of concerns, right? I think for the past 2-3 years when 5G is being brought up, there is a lot of concern from some countries about another country's 5G technology, right? Without naming the countries, you probably know about that. Yeah. So is 5G really secure? Or there is a lot of backdoor as what some countries have claimed, right? So we will have Mr. Wai Kong, Chow Wai Kong to share with us, right? But before that, I think the key theme of today's webinar is about 5G was designed to be initially cloud computing based, yeah? And that's why we are actually linking it and organizing it as part of Cloud Security Alliance, right? And they are radical departure from previous generations of networking, which focus a lot on just the networking infrastructure in the 3G and the 4G world. Yeah. So our today's webinar speaker, I need to read his credential. Yeah, give me a minute. So Mr. Chow Wai Kong actually is the director of Jaco Lab, a technology training and consulting company, right? And he has been in the ICT industry for the past 30 plus years, working in companies such as Ericsson, Huawei, right? So these are the 2 big names that are definitely qualified enough to talk about 5G. Yeah, and he has also worked in companies such as Agilent and HP. Yep. And in the past, he has rolled out different types of networking technology in the 2G, 3G, 4G world, including home location register, that's the HLR, HSS that we know about, and also authentication center, AUC projects for mobile network across Thailand, India, and many different Asia Pacific countries. So without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Chow Wai Kong to share with us about 5G security and for about 30 minutes. And following that, we will have panel discussions with 2 other distinguished panelists. Yeah, Wai Kong, please.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. For spending your lunchtime with us. Okay. So that we hope definitely to make your time really well spent, right? So thank you, Prof. Alex, and Jim, for inviting me, to share some of my ideas and experiences, with 5G security, right? Thank you for the CSA APEC. Okay, so let me share my screen, and then we can launch into this. Right. Okay. I hope you all can see the screen. Yeah. Right. So the title of my talk today is on securing 5G. 5G is actually the first fully cloud-based mobile network. Okay. Compared to the previous generations of 4G, 3G, and so on. So let me. Okay. I think Jim has already introduced me. Right. Okay. Interestingly, when you see a lot of the news in Singapore, even today, right, there's a news release on StarHub launching their 5G. There's a lot of talk about, blazingly fast, download speeds for your video, for your files, and how seamless it is, when you're moving and you can still watch your video and so on and so forth. Right? But actually, there is a very big part of 5G that is meant for enterprises. Okay, so this study, report that came out of Disruptive Asia at the end of last year said that there's going to be just Singapore alone, right, $9.3 billion that is going to happen with the digitalization for 5G, right? And if you look at the pie chart, more than half of this is going to come from non-telco sector. Yeah. So, so not just the telcos will benefit, but a lot of the enterprises are going to benefit from the rollout of 5G. Yeah. So you can see on the right-hand side, there are applications that are, for example, connected cars, remote healthcare, even the ports, right? Those are actually among the applications that will run on 5G. And, the value add that 5G can bring to the applications is the one that's going to spur, this increase in the revenue. So, the enterprises, if you're an enterprise, you should look at, what sort of applications you can develop on top of the 5G infrastructure. And that's part of this talk that we're going to have today, right? Okay. Right. So the next slide here talks about, the 3 core use cases. When ITU, which is the International Telecommunication Union, when they designed 5G, with the specifications, they talked about 3 areas which are, signified by this triangle here, right? You actually, have the EMBB at the top, which is the enhanced mobile broadband. That's the one that most people know. This is actually what they call 4G on steroids, right? Very fast, blazingly fast, 1 megabit per second downloads that you can get. Minimum is 100 megabits. That's 10 times faster than what you can get from 4G today. But more importantly, there are 2 other use cases which they're a bit shy on getting the publicity. And this is one is on the lower left-hand corner, which is called MMTC. This is what they call massive machine type communication, right? It's mainly for what we'll call the low data Internet of Things, with 5G, you can actually get, up to 1 million devices connected per square kilometer, which you cannot get, for 4G today. And, the devices will also have a 10-year battery life. So you can actually, deploy these type of devices using the MMTC mode of communication, and your device can you can bury it in the ground, or hide in a lift shaft somewhere, and it will last for 10 years, right? Without replacing the battery. And then the other one is actually the ultra reliable low latency communications, or URLLC. So this is the one that is going to be used for stuff like driving cars, self-driving cars, mission critical applications, for example, remote surgery, industrial automation, and so on. Yeah. So this will actually give you a very fast, almost real-time response, 1 millisecond latency. Oh, gamers will be absolutely ecstatic over this, right? Because you can now they can shoot down the enemy before the enemy even sees them. So very good latency specs here. So, but then if you look at it, you will notice that although 5G, has something for the consumer, which is the very high speed of download, you also have 2 very big use cases that are designed for enterprises. So a lot of enterprise applications, like government applications, things like smart cities, smart grid, intelligent farming, remote surgery, drone control, and all these, right? So they will actually be enterprise use cases that will make use of, the 5G characteristics to bring out their real value. Now, so what then enables, this 5G features? So number one is radio spectrum. So in Singapore, IMDA, has just released a whole bunch of frequencies. I won't go into details. They're all in the newspapers, and you can read them off the screen. So by having a lot more frequency bands, and the higher frequencies as well, you can, together with the 5G technologies, you can then get that sort of, 100 megabits per second, all the way to 20 gigabits per second sort of download speed. Okay, that's the spectrum side. But what is not normally mentioned is that there are two other features. One is network slicing. Okay, this means that you are able to virtualize the 5G network for your enterprise applications. So as an example, if you are, building a driverless car, right? And you know that split second of latency or delay may cause you to crash into the car in front. It may cause you to hit a pedestrian that is crossing the road when you make the turn, right? So those are the applications which, if you have network slicing, you'll be able to virtualize the network and dedicate that network to yourself. So, I mean, for those of you who are in IT, this is just similar to VPN, right? So you have a VPN channel, end to end, that will guarantee you the quality of service. Now, the other thing that's also seldom talked about is this thing called multi-access edge computing, or MEC. Right? So, because, with a big network, especially in a big country like, China or US or even in Europe, right? To go end to end to a specific cloud data center, to get processed, and then, your data to get a response, it's going to be quite a long journey for your data, right? So we're talking about edge computing. So the edge computing, as we will see afterwards, is going to be based very close, to the radio base station. For example, a traffic junction, so that, the signal, the data that you send to the network will be processed very quickly. And that's how one way to achieve the 1 millisecond response time. Yeah. So these are two things that I'm going to talk about, and then I'm going to talk about how the 5G network actually secures this, right? Okay. So this is how network slicing works, right? So you have over here the 5G, so all the 5G devices. Right, you can have, like a terminal, where you can watch videos. You can have a connected car. You can have a medical device, that maybe sit in your pocket that monitors your heart rate or your blood sugar level. Right? So these are different applications, and they will connect to the network. And each of them can request a specific network slice. So it actually virtualizes the whole network. So, your whole network then, is kind of sliced up. So all the bandwidth will be used, like the video watching one will probably take a higher bandwidth. Whereas the one for the medical device, will use less bandwidth, but there may be many, many more such devices that need to be connected to the network. And then, you actually have, the connected car, which, then has very low latency, but the connection needs to be established, and it needs to stay there. So, you need to guarantee, like, 5969, sort of a connection set up and be able to maintain the connection. So with network slicing, okay, the network is virtualized, and, as a application, you can then pick a slice of this network, just like VPN, and then you can get the quality of service that your application will need. Yeah. So network slicing basically allows dynamic sharing of your resource, which is the network resources, right? So how does it do this? Yeah. So I look at it as kind of, this is an analogy, right? So, just now we look at the three applications. So there's the video that uses the so-called, the feature called the enhanced mobile broadband, right? Which is the broadband on steroids, 4G on steroids. So they will actually have a special lane, right? So these guys will then, travel very big, bulky packets at a high speed. Then you have, the IoT type, things like, for example, looking at your blood sugar level, your heart rate, right? So the packets will be very small. the bundles of data are very small. So they're kind of little bicycles, right? They don't need to have, to be sent back very quickly because you're actually monitoring your heart rate and so on over a period of time, right? So they don't need to be sent back very quickly, and then they're given a special lane where, all these little packets, can travel, without such a high priority, okay, on this slower lane, right? And then you actually have, this particular application, which is rather time critical, for what they call the communications of vehicle to anything, V2X. So this actually uses the feature called the URLLC, ultra reliable, low latency communication. So these will then, have a dedicated pathway that actually guarantees fast response time, but may not use such high bandwidth like the video. And all this control is actually being done by, I have this little icon there, right? He's called the Police Mano. Okay, Mano is a play on the word, it's actually management and a network orchestration. So there's a network orchestrator. So the network orchestrator itself is actually the controller. So all the applications will talk to this network Mano, and the orchestrator will then say, okay, you are a e-health application. So therefore, you have subscribed to this sort of bandwidth, this sort of slice, and I will give this to you. If you're a car, you'll be given a certain sort of slice, and if you're video, you'll be given a certain sort of slice. So this is a very important entity. Is the Mano, okay, and the Mano in this case serves as a policeman that will direct the traffic. So why is 5G considered as cloud-based? Okay, a lot of you may have used started using from 4G and then 3G and then now 5G, right? 3G started as a dedicated and proprietary network. So all the connections, they are only used by telco players, so it's actually very difficult for you to go and get equipment from someone else who is not a telco player. So the likes of Ericsson, Huawei, Nokia, ZTE, and all these guys, right? So they're dedicated network. You choose to buy from these guys, and the elements and the nodes are also dedicated. So if you have in the olden days there was SMS, right? So if you have an SMS center, you have an MMS center, these nodes only play that role. Okay. Now the big problem is that you cannot buy equipment from someone else, so therefore they tend to be quite expensive. And the other thing is that they're not flexible. So once you install the SMS centers, and now who sends SMS nowadays? So SMS traffic has dropped, but you're stuck with all the hardware because the hardware cannot be used for anything else. Right. So that's where you get dedicated equipment, dedicated network. But then when 4G came along, 4G was all IP. Yeah. So it's all internet protocol. All data, no proprietary networks in there. And then the virtualization started to happen with this software-defined networking. And also the network function virtualization, NFV. Right? So this then gave a lot of flexibility. They were cheaper to deploy such networks because the IP you can get from a lot of vendors, and when the traffic and the business change, you can actually shift the applications around because they're actually running more or less on standard hardware. Okay? And with 5G, they push this even further, right? So besides just having IP, they also virtualize the network all the way to the core with services-based architecture, which we'll talk about that in a while. Right? So you see that from 3G to 5G, there's a leap, okay, from dedicated platforms, dedicated hardware to things that are all virtualized, right, and all cloud-based. That's why it's relevant to CSA here that we discussed this. Yeah. So all this seems very abstract. So what I've done here is actually to show an example of how 5G can be put to work. Yeah. So here you actually have an ambulance that's trying to cross a junction, right? So ambulance are emergency vehicles, right? And the ambulance, can have in the 5G world an application that allows it to do several things. One is to be able to talk to all the traffic lights, okay, to inform that the ambulance what route it is taking, where it is now, so that the traffic lights will change before the ambulance hit the junction, right? So this will then allow the ambulance to pass through all the junctions very quickly. It will also inform other cars through the 5G network that I'm coming, and if those cars are connected, they will then stop to let the ambulance pass through. It can also talk to things like the traffic cameras and so on. So if it knows that there's a cyclist or a person that's crossing the road, when the ambulance is trying to hit that junction, the ambulance will be informed, and so the ambulance driver will know how to slow down. Right? So you get the ambulance, talking to all these different devices and getting all the information, from the network and so on. Right? Then it will be able to talk to a back-end system, right, which may be the hospital and so on. But it can also talk, to all these vehicles and so on via, this thing which we call the mobile edge computer device, which actually sits very close to the radio base station, so that it actually minimizes the delay, of the ambulance, for example, talking to the vehicle and ask the vehicle to stop. And then, of course, you can add, more functions to it. Maybe like, the bus will need to talk to another bus or talk to the bus stop. The car may need to download music and videos and maps, and then, the car may also talk to, for example, the car park system. So all these will then use different slices, okay, because, bus talking to a bus stop sign, a car downloading music, those do not need to have, sort of time critical factor, that will use the URLLC use case of 5G, right? So so that's the gist of it, that all these different applications can use different slices, which will give different quality of service. So what then actually happens, how will we know that an ambulance is coming? How do we know that, the vehicle that's asking for this resource, is not a fake vehicle, is not a fake application, it's not somebody hacking into the system to request, for such services. So number one is that, when the ambulance switches on, its equipment, and it connects into the network, it will send a request to register the ambulance into the network, and then the network has the same key as the ambulance, and therefore it can authenticate the vehicle. So today it's very much like you got a mobile phone that actually is on Singtel, right? You cannot go and log into a StarHub network, or you cannot go and log into an M1 network. You have to log into a Singtel network, right? Because the Singtel network, you're authorized to log into the Singtel network and no one else's. And then, if you have bought a subscription that has no data plan, for example, then, you will not be able to log into the Singtel network and be able to get data. You may be able to make voice calls, you can send SMS, but you cannot have a data, right? So this is the same process. Right, so the ambulance logs in, right? It authenticates, it gets authorized, to connect to the network. Then once it connects to the network, the application starts, right? You get a data session. Let me try to get the annotation on. This is to draw. Okay, so you see, so that you actually get the application will start, and you request for a data session, and then it will then get authorized for the session, yeah, and then once it gets connected, then the application, the ambulance will then request for a connection to the vehicle emergency services application via DNS, in the in the overall network. Right? Then the app is authenticated, and then you can then connect and then get your service. So there's all this process that goes on. First, you authenticate that you are the vehicle. Then to authorize that you actually can connect to this network and get this particular service. Then you can say, okay, this particular ambulance has subscribed to this sort of network slice, and therefore the session is authorized, and therefore you can then get this service, the emergency vehicle service, from the network. So all this is done very, very quickly, because it's all using the 5G connection, with the network slicing, and also you actually have the applications sitting right at the edge, very close to where the mobile device is. In this case, it's the car. Sorry, it's the ambulance, right? Okay. Oops. So so how then does this work? Is kind of under the hood, right? So this is where this is in the network itself. So you actually have your user equipment, like for example the ambulance, right? You actually have the access network, and then you actually have the control plane here, where all the authentication and authorization is being done, and all your applications actually sit in the user plane, okay, where you actually have all the data routing that's happening, your applications that are external to the network, internal to the network, right? And then very importantly, you actually have this edge computer controller, which will give computing resources, to the network devices. And then this is also the same place where you can actually connect, to the global cloud infrastructure. Yeah. So this is the 5G network control. This is the 5G network user plane, and this is actually where then it connects out into the rest of the world. So this is where the authentication happens, right? You can actually have the devices, your cars, your traffic lights, and so on, logging into the radio network, and over here, is where all the authentication, authorization, you actually have keys, you have the security negotiation, subscriber privacy, it's all done at this level between the device and the network. Radio network. And then when you spin up new instances of new services that you want, including the network slice, all this is actually done from the radio network to the servers, at the edge, as well as to the back end. Then, because this actually is to secure the network resources and network access. Then what happens to your application resources and application access, right? In the 5G world, this portion here, the blue boxes, is actually outside of the 5G authentication protocols. So it is expected that the operator who's designing the network will actually take care of things like, for example, physical layer security, like making sure that your antennas, your edge computing devices are kept in safe places. right? And then, you know, to design the network such that, you know, jamming doesn't happen, such that, you know, if one of the antennas is jammed, you can actually switch to another one. And then, you know, the rest of the security, you know, for the management and orchestration, that actually belongs to the application and is outside of the 5G network today. Yeah. So when you are, you know, somebody who's actually designing an end-to-end application, you as the person, the security architect or the enterprise architect, you need to understand, you know, where all the where 5G is strong and where 5G needs help. Okay. Don't worry, I'm coming to the end of my presentation, right? So what is in 5G that is not in 4G? Okay. So what's common here? 5G and 4G security. 5G and 4G security are both based on the ITU-T, which is the International Telecommunication Union. T is the telecom recommendation body. So they recommend the standards, right? So they look at things. Number one is access security. So authentication, authorization, that is inherent in both 4G and 5G. Okay, unauthorized entities should not be able to access the network. So like I said earlier, if you're on Singtel, you cannot access the M1 network. If you have not subscribed to a data plan, you cannot access data. You can only make voice call, you can only send SMS. Yeah. Second is identity protection. So, you know, when you log into the network, you know, the people who are even sniffing on the network itself should not know that you are actually on the network. And how it does this? By the issuing of temporary identities. So these are transient identities. Yeah? That's to protect you. Next is confidentiality. So your information, you know, your identity and the data that you send is actually encrypted to protect you and the data. And then finally, information protection. You actually need to secure the data while it's being transported within the 4G and the 5G network. So in this case, right, so you actually got these 4 points and, you know, to secure the network and your data and the identity. So this is 4G and 5G. So what's new in 5G, okay, in terms of security? Okay, this gets a bit technical, right? So 5G has added security. You know, it actually uses the AKA, 5G AKA, what you call authentication and key agreement algorithm, or uses EAP ACA as an algorithm, you know, for the authentication. Compared to 4G, the USIM ID is now encrypted. Okay, so in 4G, for one single message, your identity is actually sent in the clear, just one message out of the hundreds. You know, but with 5G, everything is encrypted, so nothing is sent in the clear anymore. So your identity is totally protected. Yeah. Then the other one is the USIM key. Okay, today the USIM is your SIM card. Yeah. So in your SIM card today, you actually have a 128-bit key. But that will move to 256-bit key at some future date. The whole idea of keeping it at 128-bit now is that, you know, if you buy a 5G phone, you know, today StarHub has announced that, you know, they're going to launch 5G for selected subscribers. So if you buy a 5G phone today, you can take your StarHub SIM card, stick it in, and it will work. Okay, so you don't actually have to change your SIM card. You know, we have not moved to 256-bit yet. That's for convenience, right? But in the future, it will. Why 256-bit? Because, you know, when quantum computer comes, they've calculated that it is a vulnerability to have just 128-bit, and 256-bit should be able to secure, you know, your identity long enough. You know, then the next thing is that your traffic encryption today on 4G is 64-bit. With 5G, it will be 128-bit. okay, and you go to 256-bit sometime in the near future, right? So again, higher levels of security for 5G compared to 4G. Your response to ID request is encrypted. Previously, it was not, so that's why your ID was transmitted in the clear for one message. Now it's totally secure. And then the other thing is that, because one of the key features of 5G is network slicing, so there's also network slice security in 5G. Okay, so one slice will not be able to see the data in another slice. Okay, so all these are kept in containers, and you have the container security with this 5G implementation. Right? The only thing is that 5G networks secure data that's transferred within its boundaries. Okay, end-to-end security is the responsibility of the device and the application. And the other thing is that the multi-access edge computing is outside the 5G network. So therefore, MEC security is outside of the 5G network. And that has to be taken care of by the application itself and by the MEC. MEC has its own manual, okay, management and network orchestration. It has its own manual. It has its own allocation of resources and so on. So that will be, outside of 5G, but it is actually captured in another standard, which is under ETSI, okay, the European Telecommunication Standards Institute. Okay, so 5G is going to have a lot more complex operating scenarios, and these are some of the scenarios. I will not go into them in detail, but one of the interesting forms of attack in 5G is that if you have a 5G network that does not have full coverage, then your 5G will downgrade to 4G. And if you are using just purely 5G functions to protect your 5G security functions to protect your data and identity, then during that period of downgrade, you may be susceptible, you may be vulnerable. Okay, so just be aware of that. 5G is great; it has more security functions, but in situations where you need to downgrade, you actually have to take care of that as the application itself. Okay, in summary, okay, 5G is definitely faster, not just faster than 4G. It's also a network designed for enterprises, right? 5G enabled applications are going to be more sophisticated. There are going to be a lot more applications. There are going to be more enterprises that are going to be using this network. And there are going to be also some third-party service providers, like, for example, Amazon, Microsoft, Azure, Google, just to name a few, right? That will be supplying services, to the 5G network, and you as the enterprise application designer, you can make use of these features and the services that are provided by these third parties. But with all these, there will come the concerns, right? That is it secure? How do I connect to these third parties? And still feel that I'm not vulnerable and threatened. Yeah. So things you have to consider, right? Is the end-to-end security. Now, security in 5G is always a consideration. If you look at all the standards, all the different parts and chapters in the standard, there's always paragraphs on security. So it's never as an afterthought. Okay, so that is one thing you don't have to worry about. If there are things that they do not cover, they will tell you that they do not cover, and why they do not cover. Which case your application will have to take care of that security. Now, 5G network is more secure than 4G, which I've mentioned just now. And as with all security, this is a journey. The journey will always evolve, when there are new use cases that are coming out. And because now the IT and the telecom network are so tied together, right? So, you know, telcos, cloud service providers, like, the Amazon, the Google, enterprises, standard bodies, will all have to work together now to, build more secure networks for everybody. Yeah. So it's now a whole lot more collaborative effort that's going to be required, to push 5G ahead. Right? But the rest be assured that, 5G network is, if you're comfortable with 4G networking, then 5G is, even better and more secure than 4G. Okay. So with that, I've come to the end. Thank you everybody, for your kind attention. If you have questions, you can send it to me. My email address is there, right? I'll try to help you. Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Wai Kong. For those of the audience who have just joined, we are having a 5G security webinar now. So Mr. Chia Wai Kong has just presented, give us a very short, but I think comprehensive enough 5G security content. Yeah. So the next segment, we are moving into panel discussion, right? And before that, the audience, you can actually type your questions in the chat box, and I'll be looking at them and post the questions for you to the panelists themselves, later on. So I think what Wai Kong has mentioned is very relevant for us, right? Many people think 5G is just a faster speed, but actually he has shown that there's this 5G capabilities triangle that give you the low latency and the massive connections as well, right? And 5G is not just about network. Actually, since 4G days, we have a software-defined network that has kind of blurring the line between the networking side of things and the IT side of things. Yeah, and 5G being very cloud native, it will really bring in a lot of the application, the software, and depending on the use cases, we may need to have other level of security, right? Beyond what the 5G network security that Wai Kong has mentioned. So without further ado, let's move on to the panel discussion, right? For today's webinar on securing 5G. With that, I would like to introduce the panelists. Myself is the moderator, right? I'm Jim. I'm the Vice President of CSA Singapore chapter. I'm also a 5G trainer with NUS, and some of the overseas institution, right? So apart from Wai Kong, who will be one of our panelists, we have Mr. Goh Keok Soon. He's today Vice President of DBS Bank. He's a 5G evangelist as well. So a little bit about Keok Soon, right? He's a seasoned IT professional with industry experience in telco, media, and now banking, right? He has spent the past 15 over years in telecom industries, having worked in Huawei, Ericsson, and Alcatel, right? And he has also worked on numerous 3G and 4G projects in Asia Pacific, right? And recently looking at how 5G can be used and will be used in the financial sector. Yeah. Our next panelist is Mr. William Ho. William is the Education Director of CSA Singapore chapter, right? And he's also a co-chair of ICS working group with CSA as well. And William himself also have more than 30 years of experience in the ICT industry, having worked in Unisys, IBM, Fujitsu, and also Huawei. Yeah, and in the past, he has been involved in the Hong Kong Chek Lap Kok Airport, KLIA, right, and NIE, private cloud, and numerous BC, business continuity and disaster recovery projects across Asia Pacific as well. And that's a long credential that William has, all security or cloud related, CISA, CISSP, CISM, ISO, and many others. Sorry, William, I wouldn't be able to read all. Right, so without further ado, I welcome the distinguished panelists. We will move into the panel discussion. Yeah, and audience, please type in your questions. One of the reasons why we invited Keok Soon, William, and Wai Kong to this 5G talk is that apart from their past telco experience, like what Wai Kong mentioned, 5G is actually a very much enterprise play, right? It's not just a consumer play. You don't just get faster speed. The biggest beneficiary of 5G probably will be the enterprises across different industry. So you have people here from education industry, banking industry, maritime, airport, port, and also seaport industry, and myself currently in the healthcare industry. So we are all, to some extent, doing different 5G trials today, yeah, in our respective vertical industry. So that's where we can actually add value to people who are not traditionally from a telco industry, yeah, who is venturing into 5G. So maybe I move on to the first question for the panelists first, yeah. So one key features of 5G is network slicing, yeah, like what Wai Kong mentioned. That is to support various dedicated enterprise use cases across, like I mentioned, healthcare, financial services, airport, seaport, and others. So what are some of the enterprise concerns on 5G security? Yeah, because traditionally, many of the enterprises just leave it to the telco, whether is it the Singtel, the M1, or the StarHub, or in overseas other telcos, to implement the 5G. But now, since 5G offers so many different enterprise use cases, so what are some of the concerns that enterprises may have? And what are some of the security protection available around network slices? Yeah. So I will invite the three panelists to maybe share with your respective industry experience on that as well. Yeah. Wai Kong, you want to start first since you are the speaker of today?
Okay, yeah. Am I muted? No. Okay. So thank you, Jim. Well, so what are some of the enterprise concerns, right? I think, as I just mentioned briefly just now, some of them are, worried that, well, since 5G is so open and, there are so many entities that can jump on board, will there be, is it secure enough, right? And how to make use of all these new features, like for example security protection around network slices, and some of them may have heard about some of the attacks that have happened especially in the IoT space, where the devices get actually hijacked, and then become some zombie bots, right, that participate in the DDoS attacks. So I mean, let's start with the question that's here, right? What sort of security protection is available around the network slices? One thing is, as I mentioned earlier, kind of in a very summarized way, it's only when you are authorized that you can actually connect to the network, right? And then, when you actually are authenticated and you actually are authorized to, have a network slice, that you are then able, to acquire that network slice. So it's very much, like today's, having the subscription and, then you're subscription based. The other part of the security, which, I've not shown because it's going to dive into quite deep, is that all the elements that are, supplying the services, they are actually authenticated themselves. They actually need to have certificates, and that certificate exchange, is what that allows the different entities to then start up new instances of the service. And the other thing is also that all these elements, even the function blocks within the elements, they actually have agents that will send these requests, into a central database, a log, central log system. And this central log system are actually monitored constantly, to ensure that there are no abnormal behaviors of certain types of devices or certain types of application that may be requesting for services that not being used all the time. And of course, right now they're also looking at rule-based systems, AI, machine learning, to better filter out this sort of unusual requests that are happening on the network.
Yeah, thanks, Wai Kong. Kyok Soon and William, you want to share from your respective industry?
Yeah, maybe I can share a bit on banking and financial services. So from banking and financial services, right, security and user data privacy is the utmost important, right? Since we deal with money, right? So, so in some sense, if you look at network slicing, right, it's a bit of the same concept of multi-tenancy in the public cloud, where we are actually sharing the same set of network resources by partition them into virtual network slices. So the standard multi-tenancy concerns will apply. For example, like, will my data be leaked across or leaked or tampered across multiple network slices, right? For example, if a bank, right, put its ATM network on a 5G network slice and transmits all the ATM cards and PIN information across the network, would it somehow like be leaked across the other slice and be sealed by others? This is one concern. The other thing is, of course, resiliency, right? When there's a fault on one network slice or a DDoS attack on another slice, right? Will it affect the others, right? Yeah, so these are the two major concerns, like from a financial services enterprise, what we have on, especially on this virtualized concept of a 5G network slice. In terms of what are the security available around 5G network slice, right? I think Wai Kong has mentioned like the 5G, aka key authentication. So it actually prevents unauthorized access from another slice, from one slice to another, right? This is the standard, like, it's the same concept as like if you are on StarHub network, right? You're unlikely you'll be able to hook on to Singtel network and vice versa. Other security measures that are available in 5G network slice today is like IPsec network encryption, and also in the ONM layer, right, there are actually TLS and OAuth authentication to prevent unauthorized access from ONM layer to different network slice. What I feel that the telco operators probably needs to do more, or maybe publicize themselves more, right, is that the protection around the physical assets, right? I mean, now we have like all this, in the 5G network, actually it will be more decentralized and more distributed. So there will be more areas to physical data centers and assets to protect. So I feel that compared to the public cloud providers today, probably like the network operators are not really publicizing themselves more on like what type of certification they have and all that. So I feel that probably to allay this type of concerns, right, the telcos and the network operators could actually do more in these areas compared to the AWS and Azure today, right, where they have all these this whole long list of ISO and whatever certification they have. Yeah.
Thank you, Kyung-Soon. So actually, we're running out of time. We probably don't have much time. Maybe William, you want to just share from your industry perspective?
Okay, I think there's a few keywords that are mentioned by Wai Kong and also Kyung-Soon itself. I think first of all, it's a journey. And there's the second point I want to highlight, that security is always not enough. Be it whether the telco will be implementing certain thing and yourself as an enterprise, but more importantly, I think there, when we move to 5G, there's I will call it a shared responsibility. Certain things are provided by the telco to secure the things that provided to you. But at the same time, from enterprise point of view, you need to have a certain responsibility to make sure that the end-to-end, the application, whatever you put in place are also secure. Having said that, what I mean is that the typical traditional security mindset is still need to be there. That's to say that you need to have certificate, you must have there in the implementation. In the application itself, you need to think about how to secure the application when you develop the application. These are things that typically in our day-to-day that we are doing now is still need to be there. And on top of that, there are certain mindset you also need to adjust a bit, especially when we know that 5G, you have a high bandwidth, low latency. So you need to think about your strategy about security itself. In terms of monitoring, you cannot depend on probably, I guess, the legacy tool of monitoring the traffic, all these things. By then, when you monitor the thing, the hacker already in your system doing something which you even don't know. By then, if you find out, everything is gone. So I think there's certain mindset you need to change. A certain of this tool or this strategy you need to also implement separately, to deal with the high bandwidth, low latency thing. Third thing I like to highlight is that there are good things from the 5G security point of view, but at the same time, the authentication, authorization, especially on how do you classify what application you want to put in 5G, what are the data you want to put in 5G, to make certain mitigation control to supplement whatever the telco have provided to you is something that you need to strategize and plan and understand correctly.
Yeah, thank you, William. So before we move on to question 2, I saw quite a number of questions from the audience. Maybe we'll take that first, right? I kind of combined these 2 questions from Mr. Paul Wu, right? He was asking, what do we mean by 5G is meant to be cloud native? Does it mean telco will eventually be cloud service proof or provider, even to the extent to be able to offer cloud computing as competitors to AWS, Google, and alike, right? If they are interested in doing so. So this is about whether the telco will become a competitor to the cloud provider. And I combine with the next question, which is about blockchain, right? Will distributed trust, example based on blockchain, be called 5G security rather than higher number of bits or longer keys, but still centralized? Yep. Any taker first? I think the first one is quite obvious because when I was working in China, China Telecom is offering already a lot of cloud computing. Yeah, even having public cloud. But I'll let the panelists take it. Yeah. Who wants to take it first?
I have a short one, right? I mean, if you look at it today, Singtel is also offering cloud services. So is StarHub. So, are they playing into this space? Yes, definitely, but, I think today they are more niche players. I mean, they are dealing, specifically with the government or very large corporations, and not so much with the, consumer SME. So that space is kind of, left to, the Googles and Azure and Amazon from what I see.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe I can add on to that. Like, is the telco going to be cloud providers? I think they actually tried, right? However, unfortunately, they don't have the economy of scales versus the big boys, right? So a lot of them is actually retreating or providing very niche cloud services today. Yeah. So on the other question of what do you mean by the network is the 5G network is cloud native? So I think Wai Kong has already mentioned, right, in the 3G and 4G days, right, actually the network is actually designed as more like a monolithic and also a hardware-based system, whereas from a 5G angle, right, it's designed from scratch as a software-based and virtualized system where you can actually be able to run on standard hardware. That's what it meant by cloud native. Yeah.
I think maybe just add a little bit, because earlier I also talked about microservices. So with the 5G, they're definitely moving on to microservices. So all those things like, for example, authentication, authorization, session management, each of them actually have a bunch of microservices. And let's say, for example, if you spin up a slice, you can actually even configure that slice to have additional authentication and authorization within that slice to be more secure, right? And each of them will again be a microservice, and that's why you actually have this Mano there. They actually can then orchestrate all these different little microservices to form the service that you need. So that's why 5G is cloud native, because it actually makes use of all these microservices compared with 4G, and definitely 3G is out.
Yeah, thanks both. I think we will overrun by about 10 minutes if you guys don't mind. Yeah, because of the sheer number of questions we have received. Yeah, I think it's a very hot topic. So let's just quickly move into question 2, which again is a question we received before the start of this thing, right? So we have seen in different security layers 5G will provide in Wai Kong's presentation. And I think many of the people here may be somehow involved in some kind of manufacturing. And in manufacturing, there's a lot of OT, operation technology involved. So from an IT or OT perspective, what are the other considerations or potential challenges in security design and management? Yeah, maybe William, you want to start first since you are doing a lot of IT and OT in your industry.
Okay, I think just to state the term OT, I think to many is maybe some of you be a new term. Just to OT stand for Operation Technology. I think it covered quite a large spectrum of things. In terms, sometimes we call ICS, Industrial Control System, SCADA system, all these things. So I think with the introduction of 5G in this environment, definitely we also look at the IT and OT conversion. There's a lot of consideration from a security point of view. For example, you have a lot of this sensor on the in the plant or in the terminal or in some of this area that you're deploying your 5G. And this sensor now, because using 5G is a high bandwidth, low latency, as I earlier also indicated, the traffic now is comparing to what we're seeing now is much more larger and much more amount in terms of the volume itself. So from a security and point of view, you need to look at the potential is that how do I identify if there's a malicious things happening? How do I quickly able to identify that? So there's new thing that we need to adopt, like AI, like machine learning, or these things, to gather enough baseline information for them to understand, to train them so that they can help you to identify before things actually go wrong. Because the high traffic and also this thing will, by then when you discover, it's too late for you. So this one consideration about the tool you need to select. Probably you need to also think about AI and machine learning. Second thing is that the devices that connect to the 5G itself. I think besides the telco providing you all this authentication, authorization, the device have to be somehow to be authenticated by your own application, besides the thing that are provided by telco itself. So it's voiced down to your application. How do you determine whether that is the right device, the right people using the device, and the right roles and access control that you given them based on the role they're supposed to have? So again, there's quite a lot of consideration. And in this presentation, in this session, we cannot cover everything. But I just want to highlight some of these points that probably in the design and planning, you need to consider that.
Thank you, William. Yeah, so IoT definitely is a key thing that's going to be enabled by 5G. So maybe before Wai Kong and Kyok Soon can add on to this point, it links to the next question as well, right? So the next question is about one of the key capabilities 5G will bring is MMTC, right? Massive Machine Tap Connection, which many people relate this to the Internet of Things to a larger scale. But today, we know that the IoT has many different connectivity probabilities, right? Using LoRa network, ZigBee, ZigWave, NB-IoT, and most recently, a lot of talk on Wi-Fi 6, right? Which of these are more secure and should be used? This is important because we know that from some industry report, 5G actually will add the highest number of GDP to the manufacturing sector. And to many of our surprises, Singapore, actually more than 20 to 30% of our GDP is relating to manufacturing and related services. Yeah, so definitely IoT or 5G will be doing a big play in the manufacturing sector. So may I invite either Wai Kong or Kyok Soon, you want to start first?
Okay, so about the IoT, right? I think one of the biggest challenge about 5G is or one of the key selling point of 5G is MMTC, right? But as a result of MMTC, right, it also brought about a very big challenge on security, because in 3G and 4G, right, we are talking about the network is actually used for humans only. But 5G, there's a projection of up to like 50 billion connections that is going through this network. So there's actually a very large or big increase of potential surface of attack. and also a lot of higher chances of DDoS attack, right? Which is one of the biggest, I feel that it's the biggest challenge of how to manage all these potential DDoS attacks from all these 50 billion devices. So as to the question on which type of network is more secure, I guess I'll be a bit biased to say that 5G is more secure, but probably from my telco background, but I guess maybe some Wi-Fi guys may dispute. But why I say that, right? Because first of all, 5G is designed on a carrier grade versus the enterprise grade, right? The other thing is that the 5G actually come with I call it the 5 pillars of trustworthiness. Number one is identity management, right? I mean, today with the AKA arrangement that Wai-Kwong shared, right? And the operators actually have a very comprehensive KYC process, know your customer process. We actually know that whoever that connect to the network, we have a proper identity to the user. So that's a very strong identity management. In terms of communication protection, and that's encryption and all that, which Wai-Kwong has shared. The other thing about one thing very special about 5G is also security assurance. So the GSMA and 3GPP has come out with something we call the NESA, right, with a security group that actually allows the network equipment manufacturers to voluntarily actually send their equipment for this certification and all that, which I feel that the other standards may be missing today.
Yeah. So just to add on to that, some of these network standards here, right? I think all of them claim that they have security, and to be fair, most of them actually have identity keys and encryption of 128-bit or up to 256-bit. So Wi-Fi 6 actually starts with 256-bit, right? So they are as secure, if not sometimes even more secure than the 5G. But the thing is, with Wi-Fi, for example, it's up to you whether you want to turn on the encryption, you want to turn on the authentication or not. Whereas with 5G, the default is always on. You cannot turn it off. You have to get authenticated before you can come to the network, because it's a public network, right? Whereas Wi-Fi can be a private network. So therefore, as Kyok Soon has said, by default, telco networks 4G, 5G, they come with the security already built into it, and you have to use it. You must use it, otherwise you cannot get on. Whereas for some of these private networks, some of them, like for example Wi-Fi 6, and the other one that's not here is actually Sigfox. You can actually turn it on or off. And so there's this two different sides to it.
Maybe just to add on, I'm not to dispute whether Wi-Fi 6 or 5G, which one is better to which one. I think both have to take the consideration about security. For example, Wi-Fi 6, they are actually having this WPA3 now launch announced. I think more importantly is from the end user or from the user perspective, I need to reiterate again, the thing is that to think about the security strategy and the plan that you need to put in place, utilizing whether Wi-Fi 6 or 5G itself, the layer of a defense you need to put in place. And that doesn't mean that we take away whatever traditionally that we put in place now. Probably you need to add on top of what you have now to enhance and secure or improve the mitigation control that you have. For example, in terms of the 5G itself, IoT or IIoT, the device that you put in place, probably there's a layer of not just the authentication, but just why I also briefly touch on would be the role of these devices, what they can do, so that you authorize them according to the application they're supposed to be accessing. So that would be another layer that you put on top of what is provided by the carrier or provided by the Wi-Fi standard itself. So there's a journey, as Wai Kuan mentioned. Security is a journey. So journey itself need a lot of planning and need also a lot of strategizing, and also depends on the product coming on the market, because the standard coming out, there will be manufacturer devices, all these things, or manufacturer that need to comply with certain requirements. So along the way, there'll be certain things that we need to do some study to see how it fit into your organization and enterprise utilization application itself.
Yeah. Thank you, William. Yeah, so I hope that this answer most of the people's question. I saw a question from audience as well about consumer devices, which link to mobile devices and IoT. Yeah. So we have overrun by 10 minutes, and I would like to thank our three distinguished panelists again. Yeah, and 5G is a hot topic, right? Whether is it for this webinar, you have any feedback, questions, or requests for subsequent webinar topic to CSA, right? Or you want to join us as a member, you can always email to csa.sgchapter@gmail.com. Yep, and we definitely will be organizing more and more security-related topic, especially 5G related, with more trials that is happening around the world and including Singapore. Yep. So with that, we thank you for joining today's webinar, and we look forward to your future participation as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you.